Welcome to the Web Platform Podcast, a developer discussion that dives deep into all things web. We discuss topics relevant to developing for the modern web and the web platform of today, tomorrow, and beyond.
Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Web Platform Podcast, episode 143. We're really excited today. We're going to be talking about ReasonML, what all the cool kids are into these days. And we have a very, very special guest with us today, Ken Wheeler. He's Director of Open Source at Formidable Labs. And so before we get into the show, I'm going to pass the mic over to Danny, who's going to be introducing This Week in Web.
Thanks, Amel. So for This Week in Web, we have a few pretty exciting things. Angular 5 and Angular CLI. Angular 5 and Angular CLI 1.5 both got released, so take a look at those. There's a huge blog post about all the cool stuff they've been working on. We at work just upgraded a project we're working on from 4 to 5 with no problems at all. React 16.1 beta has been released, and there's some folks that are looking for some feedback. So if you're interested in helping out, maybe give that a shot. See if you run into any issues. Typescript 2.6 was released with some pretty cool features. Node 9 has been released, and Node 8 has become LTS, which is really, really cool. And not web-related at all, but Super Mario Odyssey is out, and it is a very, very good video game. So if you have a Nintendo Switch, you should be playing Super Mario Odyssey. And that is it for This Week in Web.
Thanks, Danny. So we're really, really excited to have you on our show today, Ken. You're super internet cool and super internet awesome. If anybody is looking for a good time, please follow Ken Wheeler on Twitter. He's really one of the most funny and I think liberated people I know writing software today for web. So Ken, could you, before we talk about Reason, you have a really interesting story and what your journey was to software. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and
the life story, or how I got into software?
Give us the extended Twitter version of your background.
Wow. Okay. So way back in the day, I remember being a child and having a DOS computer, a huge floppy style computer. And you would write DOS to get into games and stuff. You play text adventures, and I came across QBasic, which I thought was pretty cool. And I could already type pretty well, so when it was time to go to typing class in school, everybody else had to do native speaking, but I was already tight at typing, so I was can I just play and do what I want? So I would do stuff with QBasic, have it draw gradients and all this stuff. A lot of fun graphics kind of UI kind of stuff with it, or make my own text adventures. So that was I guess the intro to programming right there. As time went on, now keep in mind I'm old, right? So I used to I remember you log into AOL and they used to have the things called punters, right, where you could throw each other off the internet. And so I guess I got into Visual Basic then, writing these AOL programs, and I programmed for a little while, and then I got to that age where I guess programming wasn't cool. So I did a couple different things, playing football, but more notably rapping. I wanted to be a rapper, so I would hang out and make beats, and a lot of my computer tech skills then transitioned into recording engineering skills. So for a while there, I was making beats, and I went to a beat battle in the city and won it when I was a kid. So I kept doing it, and went back, won the beat battle again, and I was pretty much a record producer at that point. I was working with some labels and stuff like that, having a good time. And then Napster came out and kind of destroyed doing that as a career. So did a couple different odd jobs, had a physical recording studio in a place for a little while, had some real weird jobs, and then I guess, just floated in between stuff. And then eventually my mom's like, you gotta get a job. So I was like, okay. So I went and looked in the newspaper. That was back in the day when you look in the newspaper for jobs. And I saw like web development, and I was like, really? No, I could do that. And so I called them up and lied completely about my experience and got in there and then kind of just like learned like the first 2 months on the job. And worked there for a couple years. Ascended the ranks, came to a new place, worked there for a couple years. That felt pretty good. And on the tail end of working there is when I wrote Slick Carousel, which was like my first foray into reasonably popular open source. And I also started getting into React. So I would write like some like the first tutorials on React and things like that. And then the fine folks at Formidable called me up and asked if I wanted to write React full time. I said absolutely, and then I've been there a couple of years now. I started off, I guess, just a software engineer there, but I guess more recently, like in the last year, they made me the director of open source. So while I do still do client work pretty regularly, also do a lot of the driving and direction and authoring of some of our internal open source.
That's super cool. I mean, I was expecting you to drop something like, I am Chuck Norris's inspiration or something like that. I heard something about you being a boxer. I mean, there's all these really cool rumors on the street about like, Ken Wheeler in his past lives. So
yeah, I boxed. I trained
okay,
MMA.
so this is true. Yeah, MMA. It's true.
Butcher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
MMA is true. Okay, good. That wasn't just a rumor.
Yeah.
Oh,
not in like a professional career capacity or anything like that.
You're just like
another, another fun one. Another fun job I had was I was like a matchmaker for rich people.
That's amazing. Holy crap.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I don't want to talk about Reason anymore. I just want to talk about that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of weird jobs that I've had, we could have an entire podcast on my checkered employment.
So
that's
we'll have
fantastic.
to dedicate a separate show to that, maybe like an end of year special, But the reason why we're here today, you guys got that? The reason why we're here, very full of really bad puns, is to talk about ReasonML. And so the first time I heard about Reason was maybe a little earlier this year, poking around the Facebook project, and I'm like, what is this thing, And more recently at React Boston, I think Marcel Cutts gave a really, really good talk there, and you were one of the speakers as well, Ken, and that's where I got to meet you in person. So can you briefly tell us what is Reason, and yeah, just to a completely a newbie audience.
So Reason is like a syntax toolchain on top of OCaml. Right, so it's I guess it's harder to explain. So if you were writing like OCaml, and you did it,
which is what?
OCaml is a systems language that's been around for a while, and it's a really fast, pretty good language. They use it in all kinds of stuff, but a lot of like fintech and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good. It's like it's like a functional language, but with a functional language that you could put things to prod with. It has things like side effects and things like that are kind of necessary to actually get anything done. So, but it's got most importantly is you have types and you have things like pattern matching, which are the jam. But what Reason is, so if you've ever written regular OCaml, it's a little heady, the syntax. Reason isn't just the syntax, right? So Reason makes OCaml, and they're gonna hate me for saying it like this, but it makes it almost JavaScripty. But that's not really what they had in mind, is to make it JavaScripty, right? They're kind of like fixing some of the stuff syntactically that OCaml programmers weren't fans of. Now that said, in addition to just like this syntax layer, like a Babel, so to say, for OCaml, in addition to that, it's like a whole tool chain, right? So it's like you have reformat, which is something that'll reformat your code for you. There's all kinds. You have the whole tool chain where it's like an npm based install flow for things. So, if you want to install different type definitions or this or that, it's all NPM based. When you start your app, you're NPM running it. So it's pretty familiar from a JavaScript perspective to get started writing this systems language.
So I guess. Oh no, go ahead, Danny.
No, sorry, I was on mute. So all that sounds really cool. Saying something is like a systems language makes it sound honestly terrifying. But what is the why? I guess like why is ReasonML a thing? What is the value prop for having something like this?
So OCaml is a good language in the first place. This makes it a lot easier to write it. The value prop kind of depends on what you're doing. I just flat out like it, but coming from a JavaScript perspective, you're getting first class types, which is one of the bigger things, right? So, it's a compiled language. So coming from JavaScript, right, we're used to, all kinds of shenanigans. And our type systems are bolt-on, right? So you would do something like Typescript, which does compiling, right? But it's still JavaScript, right? It's that is compiled, and then you have Flow, which is like a checker more than a compiler. But the typing here is first class, so you're not getting a lot of the same funny errors that you would. It's the typing really feels good, and it's not opt-in. Right? It's non-negotiable. You are typing, so that's good. And then other things like number one, it's fast. It's ridiculously fast, and I think that where was I gonna go with that? It's fast. It has types. Oh, and the language features, right? So like if you're coming from JavaScript, you don't have certain language features. Things like variant types and then pattern matching is pretty expressive stuff that you can't really do you probably could do in JavaScript if you really really wanted to, but not the same way.
Yeah. So would you almost say that ReasonML is more closely related to something like Elm than it would be to something like TypeScript or Flow?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's like a compiled language. TypeScript's a compiled language. It's more something like PureScript, so to say, right? So PureScript takes Haskell and makes it. So Elm's like in a funny, weird little place, right? Because it's kind of like a language, it's kind of like a framework at the same time, right? They don't even call it a framework; they call it an architecture, right? So you have Elm and you have the Elm architecture. So it's like kind of like this, like half architecture, half language. Reason's more like PureScript almost, but it's not even PureScript, right? Because PureScript turns Haskell into JavaScript, right? You're taking a systems language and you're making it JavaScript. Whereas Reason doesn't target JavaScript as the primary objective. Reason targets like native code, right? It's a systems language still, regardless of what you're doing there. You can write desktop WebGL apps with it, or OpenGL rather. That's the first class. It is only possible to go to JavaScript with it via Buccal script, but Reason by default isn't specifically JavaScript targeted. It compiles down to compiled native code.
I see. So I guess that's that seems to be a big differentiator in terms of what is the word I'm looking for?
Right.
Well, yeah. So like that's where, and I said I can't think of the word, but something like TypeScript, which is definitely made to compile to JavaScript. It's made to be kind of an add-on to the JavaScript ecosystem, where this seems to be more like a more general purpose programming language that happens to be able to target JavaScript.
That's right. That's a fantastic description.
That's pretty cool. So just so I'm clear, ReasonML, would you consider it syntactic sugar over OCaml, which is this like 20-year-old systems language? What's the relationship between Reason and OCaml? Just to clarify that.
So it is still very much OCaml. You have your Reason syntax, right? But at any given time, you are still operating in OCaml. So, certain things still apply, like, certain OCaml syntax things, or, if you're writing this or that, the stuff that you're playing, if you create like a list primitive, or, like anything like that, you're in the OCaml docs looking at what methods that has, And so it's still OCaml, but it's just, it's got some stuff built on top of it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And so what I'm hearing is, one reason why web developers might want to consider using Reason is that it kind of comes with a lot of the stuff that you are already putting together and assembling yourself, right? For example, if you're using JavaScript with Flow and Babel and maybe Prettier, like it kind of already has, it has a formatter built in, it has, types built in, it has all these other advantageous things built in, and it's faster than TypeScript, in terms of, compile time. So is that the value prop there? And obviously it's more extensible than just JavaScript as well, because it can compile down to anything.
That's right. Yeah, so you're getting all of that. You're getting your Prettier. You're getting, you don't need linting because you're prettiering, right? You have your types, which are first class, right? It's compiled. So it's like all the things that we're trying to make JavaScript be, this already is, right? And then when you write it targeting JavaScript, it outputs human readable JavaScript that is fast, oftentimes faster than handwritten JavaScript. So, we're really just looking at JavaScript as a render target, as a compile target.
So that was actually going to be one of my other questions, is what the output looks like, because I feel like other languages compiling to JavaScript, whether it's TypeScript or Elm or Reason, is kind of, for a long time nobody really wanted to do it. I know when I first started to hear about it, I was like, I don't want that. Like, for some reason I didn't trust it. And then I don't remember if it was a blog post or what it was, but there was a misconception for TypeScript that, like, you would put in your function and it would output a bunch of just garbage, right? Like a bunch of stuff that nobody had any real idea what it was doing. But that's not really the case. So it seems like this is the same. So it's like you could technically write something in Reason, it would spit out into human readable JavaScript, which technically you could then edit if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, you can comb through it for debugging, and this isn't anything that's new or absurd. I've been doing it since CoffeeScript, and TypeScript is doing it. TypeScript is not JavaScript. TypeScript compiles to JavaScript. Elm, right? I'm trying to think of some other stuff that compiles. Babel itself writes, as far as trust is concerned, if you use Babel, you're trusting something to output JavaScript for you, right? You've handed off your code and you're trusting that to generate this code, which it's doing. It's doing transforms on it. It's nothing new or out of the ordinary. It's just taking this OCaml code and doing it with it. The difference is that the way that this is outputting it is really optimized and really, really readable. If you've ever looked at like Babel generated JavaScript, it's not that it's bad, right? But like you look through it and you're like, yeesh, because it's it's ES5ing things. Depending on what transforms you're using. But when you look at the output of Buccal script, it's really good looking output.
Okay, so that's incredible. I'm really glad to hear it spits out human readable JavaScript. However, like I'm really curious about how this kind of fits into all of the other ecosystem, like the vibrant JavaScript ecosystem that we've come to know and love, right? In terms of infrastructure and developer experience tools, right? So if I want to use ESLint, or if I've got a custom plugin for making sure that I have documentation, how do those things fit into the Reason ecosystem? Or is it just not there yet?
I don't think so. Normally, this tooling that you would be using is against your own personally handwritten JavaScript, right? So if you're working on a team and your team has code and you want to maintain a style of that code, you're going to use ESLint, right? You're going to use like a ESLint CI task. If your team was using Reason, right? Um, the decision has been made for the style of the output code. This decision has also been made for the style of the input code, right? So reformat does that for you. You hit save and the whole thing snaps to, what it should look like. So if you are running reformat and that's happening on save, so that's right there in your editor. So I mean, like a lot of these tools, like you don't even actually need anymore. It's making them obsolete, right? Type checking's first class, reformatting's type first class, right? You're outputting to JavaScript, so it's like unless they're hand editing that JavaScript that's output, there's no reason to run lint against that or any of that. You can even write your tests in Reason with Jest and then have it go like that. So anything that you want to use, like if you wanted to use Jest or something like that, you just write the interop for it, and it'll run it.
And so the interop is something that is always an interesting challenge and always a concern when it comes to languages like this, or that I guess for this specific person we're talking about, because you said you could write Reason to target whatever native if you wanted to, but we're talking about for the web. But so with the ecosystem, what is the interop story for Reason? Typescript, for example, you can distribute a separate type definitions for a JavaScript project. With Elm, you have to. There's some glue code, or I think it's some kind of. I don't know a lot about Elm, so please nobody get mad at me. But I think there's some kind of actual like messaging system where it's like you actually have to like push messages from your Elm code to your JavaScript code and vice versa. What does that look like for Reason?
So Elm, I think, has like a couple ways you can do it, or there's an old way and a new way. Last time I checked, I didn't really care for it. The Elm interop story. With that said, anytime you have type definitions that are going to get checked, right, and you're doing that interoperably with another untyped language, right, you're going to need a definition, right? So it requires interop definitions the same way that TypeScript does, the same way that Flow does, the same way any kind of type system with integrity would require when operating on a non-type language. So for this particularly, you have a thing called Buccal types, right? It's a huge repo of bindings, right? They're called bindings rather than type defs. But you have these bindings, and what you do is you specify essentially like your type signature for any of those interop points. So if you wanted to operate on if you wanted to use like moment or something, you would need to do a type def for moment, and your type integrity is only going to be as good as the integrity with which you've written those definitions, right? So it's like if you were to just say like, oh yeah, it returns string or whatever, and that had a bunch of other stuff that it could do, you're cheating yourself because your integrity is false, right? That's a hole in your application. That's a weak point in your application where you did not honestly specify the actual typing there, right? So there's definitely value in making sure that you honestly type things going to and from JavaScript. That said, the way to type things, the way to write these bindings for Buccal script is really, really easy and intuitive. So it's, and if you write it, you can publish it and share it with other people, and you start to have all bindings for all these other things. Now there's a repo called Buccal types where you can go, and they have bindings for all kinds of different things. You have React Native bindings, you have moment bindings, you have fetch bindings. Almost anything that you would use with any frequency, there's bindings for. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So
Awesome. Yeah, I mean that sounds. Sorry,
No,
I
no,
have one more thing, and then I'll get off of just type definitions and stuff. So the so for TypeScript, when you're distributing a library or something like that, you don't distribute the TypeScript code. You distribute the compiled JavaScript code, and then you have the compiler spit out these auto-generated type definition files for you, so that you're not distributing the source code. You're distributing a, I don't know, not really a binary or something, but you're distributing the compiled output. Is that the same way that you would distribute a library written in Reason?
Um, I mean, it depends. I mean, if you wrote a library in Reason that had a JavaScript target, right? So like if I rewrote React, for example, if I rewrote React today using Reason, I would distribute the JavaScript that it compiled to, because uh, you would not put the onus on every user of React to import and use and compile Reason. You know what I mean? So, yeah,
Right.
you would absolutely distribute the compiled JavaScript. Whereas if you had a Reason module that you were distributing, that would not be the case. So it would depend on, what the actual target for your library was. If you're compiling to JavaScript that it's going to be distributed as a JavaScript library, you're going to ship out the JavaScript.
Right. So I guess more specifically, my question is: so you write it in Reason, and you want somebody to be able to use it in JavaScript, or to be able to use it in Reason. I guess my question is does the Reason compiler have the same flag on it that TypeScript does, where it will auto generate the type definitions for you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, generally speaking, if you have a Reason library and you're going to use it in Reason, then the types are already there because it's part of the language. It's not like a type def. It's like, literally part of the language. Um, they like TypeScript compiles to JavaScript and strips out the types from the compiled JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
Flow, you strip the types out with Babel. If you're looking at Reason code, the types stay there because they're valid syntax, right? It's Reason. So your compiled JavaScript, however, does not have any types on it. So if you had something in Reason and compiled it to JavaScript and distributed it, generally speaking, you wouldn't import that same JavaScript back into Reason with the understanding that you would now rebind it to Reason for use. You would probably just write it in Reason the first time, if that makes sense.
Okay. No. Yeah. No. I think that's getting at what I was after. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mel. We can move away from
no,
from
no. I
types.
think actually those are great questions. You can tell who's using TypeScript here, right, Ken? So, so, I mean, a couple things actually, before we move on from that point. So when you're distributing the JavaScript output, is it ES5 or ES6, or or is it just the latest version of JavaScript, and then you're putting the onus on the consumer to properly transpile, or handle that with Babel preset env or something?
To the best of my knowledge, it's ES5. So it's ready to go JavaScript. Um, with that said, um, let me just take a look real quick. I'm taking a look here in a Reason project, just seeing what it spits out for a second here. Um, yeah, so it spits out with exports right now. What I'm looking at. So if you have JavaScript file with exports in it, it's going to compile it the same way. So the same way that Babel would do it to ES5 is the same thing. And then the onus is on the bundler that you're using to handle the imports and exports. I think you can actually configure that too, but
Yeah,
what I'm looking at appears to be like a common JS
yeah. I'm definitely seeing
output.
more of a trend where people are really just compiling, they're outputting the latest version of JavaScript, right? And they're just like putting the onus on the consumer to, to handle that appropriately with whatever bundler or transpiler they're using for their projects, which actually really makes more sense, right? Would I, why keep holding the web back, right? So I think that's pretty cool. So my question actually is that I would like to take a few steps back. We brought up Buccal script a few times, and I don't think we've really explained what it is in relation to Reason. So if we can maybe take a few steps back and just talk about, how we get from Reason to browser, right? And what role Buccal script plays in that architecture. It like Reason to
Sure.
browser.
So Buccal script is a project that makes Reason JavaScript. Right? Buccal script is the compiler by which that happens. So anytime I'm talking about writing these bindings, they're Buccal script bindings, right? So Buccal script provides that interop layer, and it also provides the output. So, if you have a Reason project and you're targeting JavaScript, you're using Buccal script to do that.
Yeah, so in this case, just to kind of have an analogy, Buccal script is like Babel, right? And does it play that role in the transforming?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that being said, so who maintains Buccal script? Is it open source? And the same thing with Reason. I'm assuming obviously.
Hongbo Zhao at Bloomberg maintains that.
Could you repeat that?
I mean, they Hongbo Zhao from I think that's it, right? I'm just checking.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's at Bloomberg,
Oh, very cool.
and
And
Zhang, Hongbo
Bingo
Zhang.
saying, okay, awesome. So
Yeah.
so what was Facebook using?
So Facebook is who does Reason, right? That's Christian and Cheng Lu and Jordan Walk and tons of other people. You have several folks are in the Reason community right now working on it. But Reason is a Facebook endeavor. And Reason and Buccal script are separate from one another. Buccal script works with Reason, but it also works without Reason. And Reason has the same sort of thing going on. They're both essentially OCaml tools that operate independently of one another, but delightfully together.
Oh, interesting. So I was just curious what the Facebook core teams were using to transpile into JavaScript, right? So I guess is there some?
Buccal script, yeah.
Oh, okay, they're using Buccal script. Okay, interesting.
Yep.
That's really cool. And so can you maybe share? So I know when I was at Marcel's talk at React Boston, there were. He talked a lot about how the Messenger teams and a bunch of teams at Facebook have started adopting this. It's really cool because you can. There's interop there where you can have part of your project in JavaScript, part of it in Reason, and bugs have gone down. Developer happiness has gone up. So can you maybe talk a little bit more about who's using this and what some of the success stories have been?
Sure. So I know that people are using it, and I know that people are targeting prod. I don't have an offhand list, but Messenger is definitely the biggest thing. What happens is if you have a JavaScript project, you can do portions of it right there in Reason and use Buccal script to compile it and import it just like any other JavaScript from another JavaScript file. Right? So if you have like a larger application and a particular module of it is written in Reason, even one file, you have a React component that's written in Reason, you can then import that from other JavaScript components and use it any which way. So you can, of course it's not going to have the same integrity as, if the entire thing was Reason, but you can be certain that that particular piece is solid, right? With that said, I wrote the first React Native app written in Reason, almost in its entirety, and the first one that was in the App Store. Right, I wrote the Seattle JS Conf app. I wanted to actually, so there's been like a lot of like playing around with it. There's been some demos and stuff like that, but I wanted to actually build something with it to kind of try and shake out, some real use cases. So I did, and I built a non-trivial application with it, used the React Native bindings, and it's in the App Store now. And in retrospect, reflecting upon the experience, it was really good, right? Again, this is one of my first real deep dives into OCaml, and my first like super deep dive into Reason. Solving real non-trivial problems and real, client needs, so to say. So I was getting exposed to some things that you don't get exposed to when you're just screwing around, right? So I needed to have GraphQL, and there wasn't a GraphQL binding, so I had to write one. Or, I needed to, So I guess the best way to explain it is this. If you write JavaScript and you have a problem that arises, right? A challenge, so to say. A problem has a negative connotation. Say you have a challenge. There's different ways to solve that challenge. So writing JavaScript, if you're operating in a JavaScript state of mind, you are going to solve that challenge the JavaScript way, right? So one of the more interesting things was, now that you're not writing JavaScript anymore, now that you're writing ReasonML, what's the way to solve that challenge? Now we have this challenge, but we also have a completely different set of tools, right? We have capabilities that can make things a bit more terse, or we have capabilities that can, provide, a type integrity for these things. We have primitives that are completely different from what we have in JavaScript. We don't have variant types in JavaScript. We there's not like a concept of undefined in Reason, right? Like the JS undefined isn't a thing. So also it's a functional language, right? And you have things like forward pipes and things like that. So you can do some pretty interesting things between the pattern matching and the forward pipes and the OCaml, I guess, like prototypes, so to say. But yeah, like writing an app in Reason makes you solve your problems a little bit differently, and it felt really good. And on top of that, the most important part is it felt so sturdy. It was extraordinarily sturdy feeling. Like when I hit compile and everything compiled, I remember I was on a plane. I was on an airplane and I was writing the app. And when it compiled, I was almost certain that when we touched down and I got internet and could load it up, it would work. And we touched down and I got internet and it worked. So, I mean, if your bindings are honest and accurate and it's compiling for you, if there's a problem, it's not going to compile, right? It says like, hey, like, there's like this like null case or what have you, and you didn't handle it, right? So things like in JavaScript where you could like not handle an error or not handle a null case, it's not letting you get away with that. It's keeping you honest constantly. So when you're done and this thing checks out and compile comes across green, you're near certain that it's not buggy, it's going to work. And I see a lot of value in that. So, I mean, you get to write things a little bit more creatively and functionally. It feels good, and, you have integrity and quality.
Oh, no, that's awesome. It sounds really exciting. Developer experience is extremely important, and so is kind of how sturdy your app should be. So I'm really glad to hear that you had that experience, and teams at Facebook are also having that. I have a bunch of questions around maturity and what's the ecosystem like, and is it ready for prime time? But I have this super controversial question that I want to ask first, which is
Okay.
which is really what does this mean for JavaScript? Like, you know, us, you know, having these gigantic apps that were transpiling into JavaScript, and that we're not even, you know, like what does this mean to like contributing back to the ecosystem, right? What does this really mean for you being able to easily interact with apps that are only written in JavaScript, or modules that are only written in JavaScript? Like I'm just curious, like is this now a rift in the ecosystem that's not healthy, or is it a healthy rift? I mean, I'm, you know, just putting it out there.
So, I mean, I think that in the JavaScript, so, I mean, first and foremost, JavaScript's eating the world. JavaScript is by far the most popular programming language. The greatest number of users. It's extraordinarily portable, and you're seeing it being run in places that you wouldn't even believe. So the cross-platform, cross-device, cross-what have you, portability is insane. So JavaScript is pretty omnipresent at the moment. With that said, I think that some people think that JavaScript's fine, other people don't. And I think you're seeing a lot of tools spring up around it not feeling fine. So you see TypeScript, you see Flow, you see Babel, right? These are to augment a language that is now everywhere, and at the time just isn't good enough, right? You're seeing big companies with big projects with real problems developing these tools to solve these problems, the problem gets solved real quickly when you write I don't want to say a real language, but when you write a language that is mature, time tested, has the a lot of the gripes are built right in. So I mean, for me personally, I think that moving forward, we're not seeing JavaScript's not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to be in more things, right? As they figure out how to optimize it better. As far as people handwriting JavaScript, I mean, I haven't handwritten JavaScript in a long time. Babel is not JavaScript. I mean, technically it sort of is, but it's Babel script. It's not JavaScript. Some of it is. Now it is. Now that the spec has caught up a little bit, but now there's new stuff in the spec. Babel is about getting the jump on features, right? Things that aren't technically JavaScript yet. So, I mean, unless you're sitting there, not running Babel or not running TypeScript, you haven't been writing JavaScript either. So, I think that moving forward, we're going to see more and more compile to JavaScript's going to become a compile target. Because as a language itself, there's a well-documented history of it being a little flaky, and you see the tools in the community. They're reactionary to the problems that we face, right? So we're seeing people bolt on type systems. We're seeing standards bodies taking a while to push newer features that people need. So we're sitting there writing them and polyfilling them on the spot with things like Babel. So I think we're not going to see anything but more of it. You're not going to see any backlash.
I was just thinking about it. I'm there with you. I write everything in TypeScript. I'm trying to think, and it's probably been like almost 2 years, because I even use like TS Node to do like simple build scripts and stuff like that. No.
Yeah, TypeScript is not spec JavaScript in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, I mean, we're already doing it. So some of it's a little bit friendlier or more JavaScript-like than others. But compiling to JavaScript's been around for a long time. You remember Objective-J or whatever it was, or I think it was Object. I think that was the name of it. But people were like compiling Java to JavaScript. People were, or I forget what it was called, but it was like you're writing your JavaScript in Java. You're writing your JavaScript in all these different things where you're writing your JavaScript in a bunch of other languages, either because you feel better using those languages is because that there's actual language-based reasons why your code's going to be better if you're writing it there. And I mean, to be honest with you, as far as reasons concerned, I like writing a compiled language. You know, I think I had a tweet about it. I said, I'll take my errors at compile time. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and you know, you brought up a really good point, and thanks for reminding me that I too haven't been writing JavaScript for years now. I feel, you know, I feel a little dirty, but that's okay. So, but and you're right. I just kind of, you know, personally, and maybe this is like me being too optimistic, but you know, I just kind of like, I think, you know, we build these tools to fill gaps that we don't have in the platform or in the standards, right? But I wish we could just, you know, just make sure that we're feeding back into the platform and those standards, right? Then just make sure that we're not, you know, going too far ahead without kind of making sure that the language is also moving forward. And it is. We're getting lots of really cool new features in JavaScript. I mean, Bigint and all this other cool stuff is coming private, you know, but if there's things that we can borrow from Reason, for example, like the deprecation, the built-in deprecation syntax, where you can deprecate a function, like that is so cool. Like we need that in JavaScript. You know, I just want to make sure that we're contributing back to the language and the platform. That's all. You know.
Yeah, I think that you know, the speed at which standards bodies move, and then despite the web being built as an open platform, the remarkable siloedness and exclusiveness of said standards bodies make actual change in a time frame that is reasonable impossible. So you know, I mean, me more than anybody, I would like, and I'm not talking about TC39, who do a fantastic job. We're even getting pipes soon, from what I hear. But you know, I think that, you know, across the whole web ecosystem, right, you have these standards bodies that move at a snail's pace and they get caught up in bureaucracy, and on the other side of that, you have big companies who are writing apps and simply don't have time to wait. You know, I'm not going to wait 4 years to make money. I'm not going to wait 4 years to have a better app. So these things are going to spring up, and I think that user space solutions are often more popular and often better. You know, there's a lot of talk about using the platform when the platform can't even get used in the first place.
Oh no.
So
No, I know, I hear you, and there's like, I know, I feel like everyone is like on the same page and everyone just wants to do good, but you know, I think things get lost in translation, and I really just wish there wasn't so much beef in the JS and web community, but unfortunately.
you know, I don't think there's that much beef. I think the beef is kind of like the users versus the providers.
Yeah,
For the most part. And I don't even think it's beef. I think there's varying levels of cooperation, but I think that there's different visions. And I think some of those visions are driven by larger companies' objectives versus, you know, the objectives of people who are building for the web. It's a complex setup, but you know, if we had a more efficient, and you know, that's to say that we'd even benefit from a more efficient process, because you know, if it moved any faster, you know, some platform features could get adopted that are a mistake.
that's a very good point.
so-
Yeah, and that's why I think, you know, one of Babel actually, you know, they've got the strong, it's not, I think it's a TC39 thing, but you know, stage 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, stage 0 is really just an idea, and I see so many developers like adopt things in stage 0, stage 1, you know, really until it's in stage 3, it's actually not safe to use in production technically, but you know, we kind of put a lot of pressure on standards committees. You know, if like 101 you know, a million projects are using this feature in stage 1, you know, you don't want to be like that person in the standards committee that votes no on it. You know, and granted, like, you can always use code mods or whatever to fix it if it doesn't ever, you know, make it through, but it's still, you know, anyway. So this is like another topic for another day, but I'm really glad that you touched on it, and thank you, Ken.
I mean, you know, I think that, you know, realistically, we're not going to be writing JavaScript anyway. What we're probably going to be writing is Rust and compiling it
You
to
heard it,
Wasm.
you heard it here first. The absolute future.
But I digress. Yeah, I mean, realistically, we're probably going to not be writing JavaScript anyway. We're going to have like a WASM render target because I don't know.
Well,
I just think for a lot of things, JavaScript just
honestly, it
isn't
makes
fast enough.
sense. If JavaScript
I,
becomes more of a compile target, it makes sense to build a language that's meant to be a compile target. There are certain things that you have, if you're trying to design a user-friendly language, there are different things that you have to take into account that might not be the optimal thing. I also wanted to briefly touch on the last point that you made, Ken, about the kind of like the users of software, in this case, frameworks and things like that, versus the people that are writing them. And you're exactly right. Google is not writing Angular for me. React is not writing Facebook for me. Facebook is writing React for Facebook, and Google is writing Angular for Google. So decisions they make, they're going to make sure they make the best decisions for them internally, even if it might collide, like if something might not be exactly how the community might want it. It's not that doesn't matter, but it's, like there has to be a very good reason for them to go against what works best for the teams internally.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody's sitting around waiting for Papa Standards Body to pass down the gifts to them, right? People are sitting here experimenting every day, and I think that the more active the community is in developing, new things and coming up with clever ways to circumvent shortcomings, the more you're going to see, clever and interesting and valuable patterns emerge. React being one of them, right? We took a platform shortcoming and worked around it, and now you have a paradigm that is stronger than the platform provided solution.
Papa Standards Body, can I coin that term? Can I tweet that as soon as we're done?
Please.
That's pretty funny. And Ken, I think what you're I agree with your points 100%. And your innovation, the web belongs to all of us. We're all allowed to innovate, right? And it's not, we're not dictated by standards bodies, but the reality is we should try to, I think we should try to feed those ideas back into the standards and the platform if we can, right? Virtual DOM, super cool. Could that be a thing? Could we take that algorithm or that same thinking and apply it to the platform natively? But
I think the standards body is the guy you might want to ask about that.
Yeah, that was a rhetorical question, but anyways, it's a humbling industry, and it's an incredible time to be writing software for the web. So, we're all very, very privileged, and yeah. And
what a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive, right? And on that note, thank you so much for talking to us about ReasonML. Can you kind of give us just a highlight of if I wanted to get started, where would be some places to go? Are there some good tutorials that you'd recommend? And we can link all of these in the show notes. And for example, if there's any good projects that you can think of off the top of your head, folks should look at.
So they have the Create React app stuff for Reason, which you can go do if you're trying to write with Reason React, right? If you want to write a React app with Reason, you can install the Reason CLI that'll give you the tool chain. But I think that the most important part is, number one, look at the docs, and number two, join their Discord channel. It's still pretty early in Reason time. Luckily, the Discord channel is amazing, and everyone there is incredibly helpful. So it's all the people who are working on it, it's all the community, and everybody is super willing to help anybody else at any given time. If you have any questions, if you're trying to do a certain thing, guys like Cheng Lu will just DM you and you can talk about it. If there's anything that's missing from the docs or a paradigm that you don't understand, Cheng Lu is literally live docs. So, I would definitely get in that Discord channel. They've helped me countless times when I was wait, how do I do this? There's a ton of other people in there too who will also help. So yeah, I would say absolutely the docs and the Discord, and then there's some starter projects that you can get started with it. But my personal recommendation is build something with it. However you build things, whatever you want to build something with it. Sitting there and doing like the tutorial where it's like, hey, like this is how to add two numbers together with a function, like that's cool. But like, I could do 8 of those in 8 different languages in every single, in a single day and not have any idea how those languages actually work. So, if you really want to get an idea of the value of a language, build something with it. Build something reasonably non-trivial. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just like a, not a function that adds two numbers together. And then at that point, I think that the value of it will be clear. And between the docs and Discord, you should have help every step along the way.
Well, that's really great. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we missed that you want to talk about? I think we didn't touch on Create React Reason, which is the sister project, similar to Create React App in Reason. But you mentioned that. Thank you, and we can link it in the show notes.
So yeah, as opposed to like traditional bindings, React Reason is a little bit more integrated into Reason itself. So if you're writing a React app with Reason, it's a tighter experience than, say, trying to write an Angular app in Reason or something like that. But I mean, with that in mind, if you are a React person, I would absolutely recommend trying the Create React Reason stuff because, it's the jam. If you're already writing React code, this is like the next level of what feels good about React. React's kind of like UI is a function of state. This really gets it right. It's a different API than you're used to in React. So it's still React-y, but it's like it's great. I would definitely check it out. As far as anything else, no, I think
we covered it all.
I think that's about it.
We got like
if you want to see what a real if you want to see what a real finished production non-trivial Reason app looks like, you can go to the Formidable Labs GitHub and look at the Seattle JS Conf app, which is a Reason React native app for iOS and Android, and uses Apollo and GraphQL, which is pretty fun.
Is that the project you were working on the plane?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's amazing. Thank you, Ken. So in addition to learning a lot about Reason, I also have like a lot of new taglines to use. So I'm really excited. Lots of like quotables here. And so where can people find you online, and where are you going to be speaking next? Or anything that you want to tell us about that are you like having a baby soon? I don't know, anything.
I am having a baby. I'm having a baby in a month.
Are you serious? I actually randomly guessed that. Congrats. Oh, yeah. This is your third, right?
I mean, I'm not second.
Oh, second.
I'm not having a baby. My wife's having a baby. I mean, we are having a baby, but she's physically having the baby. Oh. I'm providing ample fatherhood to said baby. I'm speaking at GraphQL NYC next week. That should be pretty fun. And then React Amsterdam, I think, is the next big one. And then I'm doing a workshop at React Europe with the big homie Brandon Dale on React. So if you want to learn React and you're by Paris, or in Europe, then you can check us out there. Aside from that, not really. Yeah, you can check out my SoundCloud because I'm making dope 80s beats these days.
Okay. No, that's awesome. So we'll link.
Oh, and if you want to find me online, it's Ken_Wheeler on Twitter. It is the biggest dumpster fire on the entire internet, but it's good. You get entertainment, you learn a little something.
Yeah. No.
Mostly entertainment.
Right. No, thank you, Ken. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I mean, and Danny, like the TypeScript nerd, he didn't bust into flames. Like there was no spontaneous combustion. I'm really glad. I was worried. I was like, oh my God, is this going to be like a TypeScript ReasonML like nerd battle?
Yeah, I think TypeScript's dank. I love TypeScript.
Yeah.
I've never heard a programming language described as dank before, but I like it.
It's dank AF.
Dank AF. Yeah. All right. That's all right. So
They can put that on the homepage.
yeah. We can still put this on iTunes. They think thanks for using the acronym. So, anyways,
I didn't curse the entire time, did I?
You didn't.
How about that?
Congratulations.
Wow. It was challenging, but I pulled it
yeah.
off.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, we had a wonderful guest, Ken Wheeler. We've got some other awesome shows coming up. I think January, we're going to be focusing on just browsers. We're going to be talking to all the browsers about what they accomplished in 2017 and what they're excited about for 2018. And so on that note, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks again, Ken.
Holla!